Welcome to another episode of the Chronic Comeback podcast. This week, I'm really excited to have on the show Alyssa DiBona. Did I get that correct?
Yes, you did. Perfect.
I was nervous about that one. In a previous life, Alyssa worked in corporate America, to be more specific, in the fashion industry. She was living a very normal life, socializing with friends and family, working hard, spending time in the gym, until one day things changed forever. And she began experiencing horrific symptoms like extreme fatigue, migraines, brain fog, memory loss, joint and muscle pain, heart palpitations, and so much more. After the normal doctor merry-go-round that people have to go through, she was eventually diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease. It was at this point she decided to take control over her own recovery, and she actually turned to food as the medicine that she would use initially to help her make those first massive gains towards recovery. And it was food that really helped her in that first period of her recovery. She's then gone on to leave the fashion industry, and as a result of her illness, started up her own company, Holistic Balance, where she helps other women transform their own health. And these are the kind of stories I just absolutely love, because they inspire me, and hopefully inspire you guys as well, because just using such a big negative in your life to then end up being such a huge positive, so that ultimately you can look back on this time in your life and view it as a positive, which is such a real gift, really. So thank you so much for coming on the show and telling your story. I really appreciate it. We're having a few lighting problems there earlier.
That's all right. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. Thank you.
Awesome. So look, I think what I always do is go back to the beginning, really. And if you just talk me through what your health was like, before getting ill, and what your life was like before getting sick, and just give us a little bit of detail on that.
Yes. So growing up, I would say I was a fairly normal child. We were talking about that word before. Normal is it comes with so many variables. But I wasn't a very sick child. I was active. I played sports. I was, outgoing. I had a lot of friends. And like I said, growing up, I had a fairly normal lifestyle. My dad did pass away when I was 10 years old, so I do have some childhood trauma there. But eventually in my 20s, I did start to experience symptoms like migraines, and some GI issues. And again, we tend to normalize that stuff in our society that we live in now. And then when I was working in the corporate industry, this was after college, I was in, I would say, a pretty stressful job. I would say, the job of 10 to 15 people. So it was a pretty stressful job. And I started to notice symptoms tacking on, like a lot, very, very quickly. I was getting vertigo, the feeling of, just being dizzy all the time and feeling really off balance. And I couldn't explain it to doctors, but I just knew that I felt super off. I was still continuing to get weekly migraines. And then I realized I was having a lot of trouble retaining information and having trouble with my memory. And that really became something that was kind of frightening to me, because I was 23 at the time. So, I'm supposed to be young, healthy. My mind is supposed to be all there. So I was really concerned. And then I actually left this job and went into another job in the fashion corporate industry. And things really just started going backwards, like really, really fast. I couldn't get up in the morning anymore. I was someone that went to the gym probably about 5 days a week at like 5:30 in the morning. Like, I just kind of popped up, went to the gym. It was just like my outsource of getting ready for the day. And I couldn't do that anymore. I was severely fatigued. I would have to force myself to go to work. Like, I'm talking like peel myself out of bed like I couldn't explain the exhaustion. It was just like this bone crushing fatigue. And like I said, I was having the memory issues. So I was having trouble retaining new information at a new job. So it was becoming very difficult for me to perform the task at hand. And I was worried that I wasn't qualified for the job. I was like, how did I get this job? And I was like, something is off. Something is off. So I started to see a lot of different doctors. I saw neurologists. They told me that I had cerviogenic headaches, and they prescribed me a medication for that, which I did not take because I knew deep down inside that that's not what it was. I saw ear, nose, and throat. I saw my primary care physician. We did MRIs. We did CAT scans. I was in the hospital a few times because the headaches were so severe. And it wasn't until I spoke to a family friend where they said, hey, have you ever looked into chronic Lyme disease? I know someone that has this and you have a lot of the same symptoms. And your doctors are not finding anything, and they're kind of telling you you're crazy. And I know you're not, so look into it. So I started doing my own research and becoming my own advocate because that was the only thing I could do. So I was like looking up the symptoms and I was like, oh my God, like I have every single symptom. And I took it upon myself. I found a Lyme literate MD in my area. I made an appointment with them. It took me a while to get in there because again, it is, especially in the East Coast here in the US, it's like an epidemic. There's a ton of ticks everywhere. So it takes a long time to get in to see these doctors because they are so needed and wanted. So finally I got in there, and without even doing the blood test, they were like, we are pretty confident in telling you that you have Lyme disease as well as a co-infection called Babesia, which is another super common one. Very rarely do you only have Lyme disease. You also have a lot of things that come behind it that can be actually worse than the Lyme itself. So I was so happy to finally receive a diagnosis, and it took months and months and months. But little did I know that this was something that was like incurable. Like it was something that can take years and years and years to really get yourself well. And the more that I did research, the more afraid and scared I became because I just didn't know what it was going to entail. And I left my job. I left my career because I was just too sick to work. I was too sick to work a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So I was in a really dark place. And, I'm sure a lot of people that will listen to this can relate that you can, your family is, I hope that their family is like some of the closest people to you and will love you no matter what. But it can be very hard to explain what you're going through because unless you're actually going through it, you can't understand what that person is going through unless you feel it yourself, which is, it can be very difficult. So my family felt helpless. I felt helpless. But I will say that the people in the Lyme community is what they kept me going. They gave me hope. Stories, positive stories of people recovering and sharing what they did to get themselves well. But the very first thing that I did was I met with a health coach, and she specialized in Lyme disease patients. And we worked together to change my diet. I had always thought that I ate healthy, but turns out I wasn't really necessarily fueling my body. So within the first couple of weeks of changing my diet and, cutting out things like gluten and dairy and processed foods and, refined sugars, I felt like night and day within the first couple of weeks. And that was huge to me. And I really just figured out how important nutrition was. And I did a lot of other treatments to get myself well that took many years. So I was diagnosed in June of 2016, so almost 5 years ago now. The first thing that I tried was antibiotics, and I became much sicker on those, much sicker, which is common. And a lot of it is attributed to die-off reactions and your body just not being able to handle it. But I do believe for some people that you just simply, some people cannot tolerate them at all. And I was one of them. And to be on something like that for a long, extensive period of time is really doing your gut more harm than good. So you really need to make sure that you're working on gut health. So I eventually decided those were not for me. And I decided to go the herbal route. And I can't remember exactly, like I said, I've done so many different things. I can't remember exactly what I started with on the herbal protocol, but like I said, it did help me and I felt better. I started to see progress instead of just feeling like I was stuck. But I couldn't get.
What year? Sorry, you said you did antibiotics in 2016. When did you start down more of the kind of the alternative route? What year was that?
Yep. So I started that in early 2017. So I would say January 2017. So at the end of 2016, I was like, these antibiotics, they're not for me. I can't tolerate them.
And had you already, so just for clarification, you made improvements with your diet immediately, then you did antibiotics, which kind of set you back to where you were, or just set you back a little bit, or?
They definitely set me back to where I were and then some. Like I gained some symptoms.
Jesus.
I did gain some symptoms.
Right.
With
and
that.
So then to 2017, it was about attacking, kind of undoing the bad stuff that had been done through the antibiotics, and then attacking the old stuff. Okay, cool. Sorry, I just want to make sure the time.
Yeah, no worries. Like I said, sometimes I'm all over the place because I've done so many things.
Me too. It's traumatic trying to go through the timelines and getting them all right. Sorry.
Exactly. So January of 2016 started the herbal protocol, and like I said, I did see progress, but I still was dealing with a whole host of symptoms that I just couldn't get rid of. I couldn't get to that point where I felt like I could live a normal life again. I couldn't really exercise. I still didn't feel all there. And a lot of it was neurological symptoms. The brain fog just felt like it wouldn't lift. And just that insane fatigue, like it just felt like it wouldn't lift. Something just wasn't, I needed to do something else. So eventually I had decided, and I had done some research from Instagram, because Instagram is such an amazing place. I saw someone that went to Infusio in Beverly Hills, and I did their stem cell program. That it was something that I had to really, really think about, because it was quite an expense. My family actually did a fundraiser for me so that I could go. Lots of family and friends came together to help hold this fundraiser for me. That was incredible, so that I could go and have this treatment. And I did that in February of 2018. So that was February into March of 2018 is when I did that. And that was the turning point in my health. It was a 2-week treatment. So the first week was really focused on kind of building up your immune system and getting your body ready to receive these stem cells. There were so many and I met so many people there too, that it was like a family. Like we were all family trying to get ourselves well. And it was just such a beautiful place. And then the second week was when they extracted, they took basically fat from the back, my love handles, basically. They went into the back, took fat from there, and they extracted my stem cells through there. And then I received them back through an IV. And this treatment is not you get it and you're better. It can take up to a year or longer for you to see the full benefits from your stem cells. And for me, I saw progress within that year. But at the year mark, I was like, oh my gosh, like, look at how much progress I've made. I was starting to run again. I was, going out with my friends again. I was, enjoying more social activities. I was able to work again. So many things that just were like falling into place for me. And again, I still had to make sure that I was on top of my diet, because the second I would, fall off for too long, I felt crappy again. And it just made me realize how important diet was. And now flash to, what are we in now? April 2021. Yeah. I own my own business now. I own my own health coaching business to help women with Lyme disease get through, this really dark period of their life that doesn't have to be. It can turn you into something that you're made to be. And I always say to people that I wouldn't change what I went through for the world. Like, I would go through it again, because it turned me into who I am today. And I'm extremely happy. So, yeah.
Amazing. So many things to kind of go back through there. And one thing that was really interesting, and we hadn't talked about this, I didn't realize you'd been to Infusio. So I was really, when I kind of thought that Lyme was my main issue, I was looking into Infusio. So I saw a lot of really positive stories around it. And then I saw that a doctor because they had it practice in Germany as well in Infusio.
Yeah.
So I was really looking into that. And then one of the main doctors from that practice went and set up his own one. And I actually went and had stem cells with him.
But really?
They were blood stem cells. So different. It didn't really work out for me. And I think for me, it was more because, so it's since transpired that I think I've got more of a biotoxin illness, and it's more around the toxins as opposed to Lyme being my main issue. So mold being a huge issue for me. And so there were other people there who got amazing results. I think anyone who's listening, because it is such a big expense, I think it's so important you've got a very clear diagnosis before you do something like that. Because looking back on it, if I'd have just maybe spent more time and money on getting more tests, I wouldn't have gone and done that.
I will say that, like you just talked about, sometimes it's not always Lyme is the big picture. Like you said, you're dealing with mold, and a lot of these things can trigger those symptoms from Lyme, but it's actually streaming from something else. So working with a functional medicine doctor to really get to the root and do some extensive testing to determine what exactly is going on. Because, of course, Lyme can be a factor, but it's never really the whole picture. And I never like to, obviously, I am a Lyme disease coach, but I don't like to associate with Lyme. I like to just say, I healed from a chronic illness, and it can be, like we talked about, a whole host of things. So really working with a functional medicine doctor to determine what is the root cause.
Yeah. So I've just started working with Lauren Keller. I don't know if you know her on Instagram, 2 Purple Carrot.
Where is she from?
She's actually based in Spain, but she's from America.
Oh wow!
But she said that it's never just one thing. It's always all
No.
the things, which I just
Yeah,
thought was just so true. And it's because your immune system's compromised that all the things are allowed in. Um,
definitely.
but yeah, I just wanted to say that on the stem cell thing, just because I know what I'm
Yes,
and what I was like then. I just wanted, and your story is an exact example why I wanted to go and do it, because it's like a 2-week thing that can speed things up, and it's so tempting,
yes,
but because of the amount of money
yes.
it costs, I think it just
And another thing that I want to say about it too is be very, very picky about the program you are going to choose, because there are a lot of places where you can do these stem cell programs.
mm,
However, what I had was, and I'm terrible at explaining it, but like you said, you had the blood stem cells, where mine was SCF, which was a different, basically a different type of stem cell.
yeah,
So you can have different results. And there's a lot of places out there, which is really, really crappy, but a lot of places out there that are charging insane amounts of money, and they're not doing it correctly.
yeah,
Um, and when you're chronically ill, you want to be putting your money in the right place.
yeah,
And there were definitely some treatments that I did over my time that really did nothing for me, and I don't really think that I necessarily needed them. And but I also don't regret anything, because it got me to where I am today. So no
exactly.
regrets.
Exactly. And I think
Yeah.
that's what life is like, right? If everything worked out
Yeah.
first time, life wouldn't even be interesting. It wouldn't be worth living.
Exactly.
So it can't be on your own terms, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which I would quite like to be on my terms most of the
Yes.
time.
Well, you have to live and learn. You
Exactly.
have to.
I just want to something you said at the beginning, which is I think would resonate with a lot of people. It did with me when you talked about when you got your diagnosis, and then you went into research mode, which we all have to do straight onto Google. And you were saying you saw a lot of things that said, incurable, all these bleak diagnoses. Can you talk me through a little bit about how you were feeling at that stage and how you kind of kept going through those stages? What was it that you
Mhm.
used mentally?
Yes. So in the beginning, when I was, I kind of got to a point where I was a little bit like obsessed with trying to find an answer. And I was literally searching everywhere. I was searching everyone on Instagram. I was searching the hashtag Lyme disease, and I was just trying to find hope through people that it was curable, that I could get better.
Mm.
And I'm living proof that you can get well. You can. And there can be some really dark places where, and I don't blame these people, they're very, very sick, and they're just tired of feeling sick, where, maybe the support groups on Facebook where there's some negativity, and you're like, oh my gosh, am I going to ever get better? Like, is this treatment going to happen to me? Like, the results going to happen to me? It can be so confusing, but I think to look at the positive stories of people that do come out on the other side, that's what keeps you going.
Mm.
And when I stopped being so obsessed with finding the next treatment that was going to get me well, and just trusting what I was doing was the path that I was supposed to be on, that's when I started healing. You have to trust what you're doing, and it's all about mindset. If your mind is not there, then your body won't be there.
Yeah.
So mindset is key.
It's really interesting. I mean, it's something I've struggled with quite a lot, because you also, every single time something fails, you get like a little scar there, and then that scar just grows bigger every single time something fails, and your cynical, well, I say my cynical view, like of kind of the treatments, and you start to develop a bit of a belief, which I've been working on recently, that there's something not quite right with you. Maybe it will work for others, but it won't work for me. And maybe there's something different about me, and maybe there's something broken about me that means I can't recover. And that's a really, really difficult belief to overcome. Is that something you ever struggled with at all in your journey? And if so, kind of Was it
Absolutely.
yeah, was it exposing yourself to positive stories that helped that? How did you help that kind of mindset?
Absolutely. So because, um, treating Lyme, and like we talked about, the many other things that come under the umbrella of Lyme, like parasites, co-infections, mold, um, heavy metals, all that stuff, because there's so many different treatments that you can do for this stuff, it can be very difficult to understand that, well, this person did this treatment and it worked for them, but maybe it's not going to work for me. And that's okay, because we're all bio individual.
Yeah.
But you're going to find the thing that's going to work for you.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, I think just the biggest thing for me was knowing and understanding that we're all bio individual, we're all different. So just because that person could tolerate that treatment doesn't mean I can. But working with my doctor to figure out one that will work for me, I trust it. You just have to trust the process. And it can be hard when you're in those dark days. Trust me. It's not always butterflies and rainbows. And you're going to have days where, you're just feeling frustrated, and that's okay. And I think that you do have to express your emotions. But just like I always say, trust the universe. It has your back.
So
Yeah.
I was speaking to someone about this the other day, actually. If someone had said to me, trust the universe, a few years ago, I'd have just like rolled, well, probably like 4 or 5 years ago, I'd have rolled my eyes and gone, oh yeah, you're one of those, are you? And but now I'm totally on board with that, and I'm trying to pay attention to certain signs. And if just as an example, like I was in Mexico recently, and I've been looking into doing Joe Dispenza courses. I don't know if you know much about.
Okay. Yep.
Him. And so I've been looking to go to one of his retreats, but it's been one of those things I put to the back of the queue. And then suddenly this guy sat next to me randomly and just said, could I sit here? He just started speaking to me. It turns out he was from the next town, grew up in a town right next to mine. And I grew up in a really small place, and had just been on a Joe Dispenza retreat, and was with like these 5 others who'd been on a Joe Dispenza retreat, and they all came over and all just started telling me about their amazing experience with Joe Dispenza. And previously I wouldn't have, I'd have thought, okay, whatever, that's a coincidence. But now I was like, okay, well, that's just the universe telling me that I need to go and do that. That's really important. Sorry, I'm deviating away from the question.
Yes.
How did you get to that way of thinking? Is that something you've always had, or is it getting your illness forced you to kind of take a more spiritual path?
Definitely, working through chronic illness has gotten me to this place. And another big part of my healing was I worked with a woman who was a yin yoga instructor, and she was just like, her voice is like angelic. And I did that. I was very strict. I did that weekly. I always was like, I am committed to 1 session of this per week. And that really, really, really helped with meditation and just understanding the mind-body connection and how that works. So that was really how I got into that, because I saw so much of a positive effect from doing the yin yoga sessions and meditating and really being in tune with the mind-body connection, that I just adapted it because I knew how good it made me feel. So yeah.
It's really interesting that almost everyone I have on the show, I think pretty much everyone, goes on a little bit more of a spiritual path, some more than others, but I guess you kind of have to turn to something else. The normal system doesn't serve you. Did you, just talking about like relationships, you mentioned like you now go out with your friends, and that's amazing. Were there times where it was difficult to like, did you have any issues with relationships, and did you lose any friendships? Like, how did you deal with that side of things?
Yes. So when I was at my sickest, I could not be going out every weekend and drinking and going to bars, like a lot of my friends were at age 23. And it was very difficult. I started to feel like, because people knew that most likely my answer was no to coming, that they stopped asking. And I was very hard on myself. And I wouldn't say that I lost any friends. I really knew the friendships that I cherished after, because those were the people that checked up on me and were just always there for me. But it was hard. I mean, especially at that age where, that's the age where you're partying, you're living your life, you just graduated college, and it was hard. And my fiance now, who was my boyfriend at the time, it was very difficult also in our relationship, because obviously I wanted him there with me all the time to comfort me and to just, lay on the couch and watch a movie because I couldn't go out and I felt crappy. But I also didn't want him to feel like he was so locked down that he couldn't go and live his life and go out with his friends. So there can be a tough balance with that. But I think just communication is key. Communicating how you feel, especially with your partner, like, just communicate. That is probably the biggest piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, 23 was when I first got it first started happening. However, it wasn't extreme for the first 5 years. So I was able to live my 20s, which is actually, it was probably the universe saying, look, you shouldn't continue doing what you're doing. But I did. So I still continued to go out and party and work really hard for a good 5 years. So I had a good lot of my 20s where I was able to do that. And I think it was really difficult when it happened when I was like 28, like 30. But 23, when all you want to do is go out and you don't really want to be an adult. I can't imagine how difficult that must be.
It's also very difficult if there were times where I was like, you know what, I'll come out. I didn't drink through most of my journey. And when I wasn't drinking, that was probably in the beginning, that was the most difficult part, because I would get a lot of questions and a lot of judgment. And, flash forward a couple years later, I could care less. If I'm going somewhere and I'm not having a drink, if you want to judge me, be my guest, I do it for my health. And I think nowadays a lot of people actually respect me for it, because I am very vocal about, like, no, like, I'm good. Like, I don't hide it. In the beginning, I felt like I had to hide it and pretend I was drinking something, just because of that social pressure was very hard. But like I said, it did take a while, but I'm fully comfortable now.
So alcohol is it's a subject that's quite big for me. Because growing up in the UK, it's a big part of our culture, and big part of everyone I know. There's no one I know that really doesn't drink. So it's something that I've found really difficult. I've gone from drinking, 2 or 3 times a week, like probably like binge drinking, really, like going out with friends, to then going long periods of time not drinking, but then just saying, screw it, I feel bad, I'm just going to drink anyway. And I've more recently come around to the conclusion that I just can't drink until I'm better. And I know that sounds stupid. And even when I am better, it would be very much moderately.
Not at all. It does not sound stupid at all, because I said the same thing. And you will get to a point where, you feel healthy again, you feel strong again, where, when there's an occasion and you know your body, because you just understand it so much better now, that when it's a good time to have a couple, and you do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't set you back, whatever, you will get to that point. So it doesn't sound stupid. No.
It's an interesting one. But to be honest, as you get older anyway, the effects of alcohol, like the next day, are just so bad mentally anyway, it really isn't a good thing to be doing.
Well, I always say now that I know how good I can feel that like that next day, like a hangover, like I like to get things done now. Like I like to be like up and at 'em and do all the things that I couldn't do when I was sick. So
Yeah,
sometimes it's just better not to.
exactly. Sorry, I've started to make it an alcohol podcast. I
Yeah,
apologize.
right.
It just in terms of the like antibiotics stage that you had to go through, because again, I think there's probably a lot of people maybe who might be listening who
Yeah.
there's always seems to be this journey that people seem to go on, and I hope that people can listen to these podcasts and realise that they should just always try, if they can, in most instances, try and go down the natural route first at least, and then maybe try medication if that really isn't working. Like, did you go down the antibiotics route because that was kind of your how you grew up? You know, you went to a doctor, you got a pill. Like, how was that decision made, and then how did you make the decision to not do that anymore?
Yeah, good question. So actually, honestly, in the beginning, I truthfully knew that antibiotics were probably not right for me. Like I just deep down, I remember talking to my mom about it, and I was like, I really want to heal naturally. Like I've just done so much research, and I would love to heal naturally. But there was like this thing in the back of my head, and from a lot of other stories that I had heard that, well, you should really do the antibiotics because that's the only way to kill it and to get well. So I was like, you know what? I just have to do it. And I didn't really listen to my gut. I just kind of went with it because I thought it was the right thing to do. And you know what? Hey, I've had friends that say that antibiotics were the cure for them. And it's just bio individual, just listen to your body, listen to what it's telling you.
It seems to be if it's earlier on, then maybe antibiotics is a good idea. But if it's
Yeah.
that chronic stage, I mean, I was contemplating doing programs where you were on antibiotics for like 2 years, like 1 or 2 years, and I'm so glad I didn't do it. I did it for 3 months, and it was pretty bad.
Yep.
So I guess like you've already said this, but I'd like you to talk a little bit more about it. You looking back on it, you're really grateful for everything that's happened, and I think that's just such an important thing for people to hear, to know that this could be the defining positive point in their life. Could you talk us through the ways that getting this illness has actually been such a positive for you?
Yes. So, like I said, I am now a holistic health coach. My Instagram handle is at Holistic Balance. And just the getting to help women and, it actually took me a while to finally nail down on my niche and knew that I was destined to work with Lyme disease patients. At first, I was kind of a little bit more general, but seeing the results that these women have and hearing them with their wins every week is just like, this is why I went through what I went through, because I now get to share everything that I learned and share my story and what I did to get well. And, again, everything that I've learned over the years, I get to share it with them and help them to transform their health. And there's no better feeling than that, seeing those results. There's no better feeling when someone sends me a message, saying, Alyssa, like this happened this week, and since our last session, I feel so good. And that's just such a good feeling. And that's what it's all about.
Awesome.
That's what it's all about.
And do you think had you not got sick, you would still be in the corporate world, in the fashion industry?
Definitely. I think there's like a sense of security there for a lot of people that, you are working for a company, so you know that you're getting a paycheck from this company. You're getting your benefits and all that. And I just was not happy. I really wasn't happy. I didn't feel like I was fulfilled, like there was something missing, and I felt stressed all the time. one of the main reasons why I think I got so sick when I did. And I think that because of that sense of security, I probably would have still been there, definitely. And I'm so happy that I went through my journey. And, I'm lucky that I had that time to really sit with myself and reflect on what am I made to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's strange. Like a lot of people. So I always kind of had it drummed into myself through many people in my life that like particularly the company I used to work for, that this is as good as it gets. You're not the type of person that can work for yourself. You can't run your own company. And I think there's an element of like when you go through something like this, your fear of that is taken away because you're already going through one of the worst things that's going to happen. Like you losing the security of your job isn't as scary as it was, and actually
Absolutely.
the flexibility that doing something for yourself offers then plays into like you being healthier. And I mean, what's your goal now out of interest, like health wise? Are you, because my goal is to not be where I was before. I want to be better. I want to be that guy, that the first guy that lives to 120 or whatever, and
There you go.
he's doing a
That's a
marathon
goal.
110 or something weird like that. But is that the goal now for you, like optimal health, like being better than before?
Yeah. Health and, just feeling my absolute best and being able to just be vibrant, and live a very healthy life where I always have that sustained energy is, and having a clear head is everything. So yeah, for me, that's
Final question. So just someone who's going through, let's say, that they're at that stage where they've got that diagnosis, they're doing their Google research and they're going through that really tough time. What would be your advice to them? I guess more from a mindset point of view rather than a practical point of view, because as you say, everyone's bio-individual. So more around tips around mindset. So what would be your advice to those guys?
Yes. So I would say that step one. So although these Lyme disease support groups can be super beneficial, a lot of times when you're in that beginning stage, occasionally they can be places that are a little bit dark, and you're hearing from more people that are still sick, not the ones that are better and out on the other side, because now those ones, they're out living their life, so they're not spending time in these support groups. So what I would say is look for those positive stories. Come listen to the Chronic Comebacks podcast, and yeah, I would say step one is to, look for that support system that can really just get your mindset in the right place to get you on that healing path. Because although it feels like you're going to be stuck there forever and this is permanent, I promise you it is not. I promise you. The sun will always shine again. Like, this is not permanent. So look for those positive stories. And then number two, again, because you're in the beginning of, having that diagnosis and probably deciding what's the right treatment, who do I want to work with. What I would say is something that I wish that I did in the beginning of my journey is to really ask a lot of questions. Know what you're getting yourself into and just ask questions. Just, again, be your own advocate. And I know that if you got this diagnosis, you are. So just ask a lot of questions. That's my big.
Yeah, such great advice. Yeah. And I didn't tell Alyssa to plug the podcast, but I very much appreciate it. There's actually also a Facebook group called Lyme Success Stories.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so anyone listening who does have Lyme disease or any chronic health issues, really, I haven't gone into it in depth, but I'm pretty sure all they do is share. There's just people who've recovered, and they're talking. That's the kind of community you want to be part of. So yeah, if anyone wants to take a look at that, Lyme Success Stories. So if anyone wanted to connect with you, on Instagram or email you, what's the best way of them doing that?
So on Instagram, I am at Holistic Balance. So that's spelled HOLYSSTICBLAANCE. And then going there, you can also go to my website, which is holisticbalance.com, spelled the exact same way. So you can find me on those two avenues. Email, again, holisticbalance@gmail. And yeah, the best place to find me is Instagram. I'm always there. I'm always putting up stories. I love chatting with my community. It's probably one of my favorite things about what I do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll put that. I've got all your details, so I'll put
Perfect.
that in the show notes. So if anyone
Awesome.
doesn't get the spelling right or anything, then they can
Yeah.
still find you. But thank
Yep.
you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I think it resonates so much with myself, but I know it will resonate with anyone, not just with Lyme disease, but with chronic health issues. So I really, really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and inviting me on. I appreciate it so much. It was so nice to, hear your story too.
Thank you very much. Cheers.